Hi guys, welcome back to Codemaster Coach, your medical coding tutor. Today I'm calling a timeout. And in timeout videos, I want to discuss my videos up to this point. So looking at videos 1 through 9, I want to do a summation. I've already introduced you to Codemaster Coach, my channel, what it's going to be all about. I've talked about or introduced you to medical coding. We've discussed medical coding national associations as well as medical coding certifications. I've talked about the difference between ICD-10 CM and ICD-10 PCS. And I've introduced you to your medical coding books. And then last week, I talked about conventions that are used in your medical coding book. So today, with my timeout, I want to just discuss questions that have been posed to me through email or even in the comment section of the video. And just trying to tell you guys my responses. My number one response to majority of my messages is for you to look for and get to know your coding guidelines. Now remember, I sent you to the CMS.hhs.gov website, and that's where you can find your coding guidelines. You can also find them in the front of your code books. And again, this is my old code book, but look, right here in the front of my code book, I have my ICD-10 CM official guidelines for coding and reporting, okay? Right in the front of your code books. So anything I could possibly teach you about coding, an entire coding program, is based on the coding guidelines. Secondly, I've been asked about code books, and I have sold the 5 code books that I had that I was selling off by July 1. But I've been recommending that you go to Amazon.com or even your local library and see if they have one in your county library, or if they do what they call intra-library loans, where they can check with another library in that state to see whether or not they have it, and they usually loan from library to library. And I was asked, why do I recommend old code books? And the main reason is because we're doing training. For training purposes, with ICD-10, when ICD-10 came into effect October 1 of 2015, it's going to remain the same for 2 years before it changes. Now after that, every October 1, you have to purchase a new code book each year. But for the next 2 years, the code books are going to remain the same, ICD-10 rather. It's going to remain the same for 2 years and not be updated. So if you can get your hands on a used one, or just a code book, an ICD-10 CM code book, that's what you're going to need in order to do my classes. And once you get your code books, I always tell my students to love their code books. Get to know your code book so well that you will know where volume 1 is, volume 2 is. You know where your external cause index is. Because remember, when we're coding, I have to give the extenuating circumstances behind a diagnosis. You've got this strain of your neck from a motor vehicle accident. Were you the driver? Were you a passenger? Were you on a street? A highway, a sidewalk? Where did the accident occur? Were you on the job when the accident occurred? That's your external cause index. Did you fall? Were you pushed? Were you assaulted? Were you raped? All of those are in your external cause index. Know where that's at. Table of drugs and chemicals. When you come in with an overdose, was it a suicide attempt? Or did you take medication as your physician prescribed, but you just happened to get an adverse effect from it? My coding has to say that it was an adverse effect. It was taken properly. Your body just didn't agree with it. The doctor told you to take it, and you took it as it was prescribed, but you broke out. You got a rash. You're sick. If those are all in my, the drug that caused the injury would be in your table of drugs and chemicals. You need to be able to find that. And then your neoplasm table. That's your cancer table. If you have cancer of the breast, right breast, left breast, both breasts. Is it primary or secondary? Is it in situ? etc. Your table of drugs, your neoplasm table breaks that down for you. And you need to know where these are, because if you're able to find these quickly, it will speed up your coding. And you know, when you take a national certification exam, those exams are timed. So you need to move through your questions as quickly as possible. And if you know your code book, that'll help. Also, with coding, with us working from home, we're under productivity. And because you can move through your code book so quickly, you can get your charts done. Currently, my job requires so many charts per hour or per 8-hour day. Well, if I finish it up in 5 hours, my day is done. I can do more if I want, or as long as I meet my productivity standards, I'm there, I'm okay. So get to know your code book. And then the other question I get a lot is the salary for coders. Guys, that can really vary, and it varies on the 3 major things I look at is the job that you do, your location, where do you live or where do you work, and then what setting are you working in, inpatient, outpatient, ER, etc. So as far as the job, are you doing inpatient coding? Inpatient coding is one of the most in-depth, I consider it more in-depth and harder coding. They tend to pay inpatient coders at a higher pay scale. Location, where in the United States you live, or the country do you live, and then what's the salary range there. I don't know outside of the United States. I live in the South, and new coders right into the coding profession average between $15 to $21 an hour. And again, that's entry level. That's just first starting out. But again, it depends on where you live. And then the reason I stress setting is because physicians, earlier I said inpatient coders tend to make more. Well, I've seen physician office coders, outpatient coders, make a good salary when they work for a physician's office, a privately owned physician's office, because that entitles them to bonuses at Christmas time. I used to work for a physician in a physician's office, and I used that opportunity to really market myself by coming up with monthly reports that showed my physician how much more revenue I was able to produce by teaching him documentation guidelines that could help him because of his increased and better documentation, where it would have been without his documentation. And because I've been able to show him what more he can document to get more, I could increase the level of code, and therefore at the end of the month showed him how much more money I was able to make for the practice, which justified him paying me more. So again, it really depends on those major things: the type of job you're doing, your location, where you live. I know the cost of living is higher up north, with me being here in the South. Salaries probably pay more. And it really just depends. And then whatever company you work for, that has a big say in it. So I really can't quote, but if you will go to the AHIMA, AHIMA, or the AAPC website that I recommended to you in the National Association's video, it has a salary scale for the country as far as coding. So stay tuned. I will be uploading a video about principal, admitting, and other diagnoses, and which one do you code first or list first on your claim form. How do you order your diagnoses and your procedures on your claims, and what order do you put them in. So keep up, stay current with me, enjoy this ride. Any further questions, send them in. I'll gladly answer them. And guys, hang in there.